God, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. And I kept saying that over and over. What came was stop lying, stop lying, stop lying to them, stop lying to yourself, and stop lying to me. And it became clear to me that I was a liar, I was a cheat, I was a thief, and I was an alcoholic.
I mean, my list of people I want to interview is probably 100 people now, but you were one of the first people as I got to know your story a little bit. I don't know your story that well. I know you've been sober just over 14 years, which is incredible. And then I want to talk about the wheelhouse and then how Christ and God has been a factor in your life.
Sure. Like you said, I've been sober for 14 years, and my sober date is March the 24th, 2009, and that's the day I was taken to the wheelhouse. The day that I was taken to the wheelhouse, I had been homeless for about 4 months. At the time, I had a dinner theater, a comedy dinner theater. We were performing in an Italian restaurant in Clear Lake, Texas. And we had been doing that for, I would say, 7 years. We produced 4 or 5 dinner theater comedies a year. That was a side hustle. However, when I came to the wheelhouse, I had not been employed for a little over a year. So I was dependent upon the kindness of strangers and what little money we were making with this dinner theater. I would say the last 3 years of my drinking, I was drinking every day, starting when I woke up. The last 4 months of my drinking, I was drinking in and out of consciousness. Blackout was a regular part of my existence. So I really was at a place where I was losing track of time, much less every sense of reality. To the point that when I was released from county jail for the 3rd time, I had been in and out of city and county jails for a good year and a half for failure to appear, driving without a license, driving without insurance, driving without tags, public intoxication. When I got out of Harris County Jail, about 3 weeks before I sobered up, my business partner invited me to stay in her home until we could close down the dinner theater production that we were currently in. I was the artistic director, and she was the managing director, the executive director, managed all the money in the business. So I was in her house when she woke me up one day and said, "We're going to go over to the restaurant, and you're going to show me how to put all of the set pieces and props and sound equipment away into storage, because I've never seen that side of the business." We got to the restaurant. She was helping me put things away. During this, she kept picking up empty bottle after empty bottle in nooks and crannies and asked me what's going on. And I said more than once, "Well, I want to direct a Neil Simon play one day, and they always have a bar in the play that, so I'm just collecting bottles." When we finished putting everything in storage, she asked me to come to the office of the owner of the restaurant, and I was sitting there with her and the owner of the restaurant, and I was confronted with all of the lying and all of the stealing and all of the drinking that I was doing at that time. At this point, I was not welcome around family because of the things that I was doing and saying, unless I wanted help. My family very much loves and cares for me and always has, and always did.
Is this a family like your parents and siblings, or is it your wife and kids, or what family do you
No, I'm not married and I don't have children.
Okay.
One of the common threads through alcoholism is we're all selfish, and I take it to the extreme of I don't want to take care of anybody. So okay. I've gotten to a point in my life at 56 years old, I don't have any children, don't have family. This was a mother, a father, and a stepmother.
Okay.
and two sisters as well. So I'm sitting in this office with no family. I have this business partner of mine and the owner of the restaurant. They're confronting me with all these things. And I told them, I said, "I'm not a liar, and I'm not a thief, and I'm not an alcoholic. I may have a problem drinking too much, but I'm not an alcoholic, and I'm certainly not a liar, and I'm not a thief." And I stormed out of that office.
Did you really believe that when you were saying it?
Yep.
Okay.
And I stormed out of the office, and I was standing in the parking lot in front of the restaurant. And, I'm not going to this day, I really don't think it was a prayer, even though I was praying, even though I was a believer, even though to this day, I don't think it was a prayer. However, I do recall clear as day, repeating over and over, and I was doing my hands like this. What do I do? 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 And then I started saying over and over and over, God, what do I do? What do I do? God, what do I do? What do I do? God, what do I do? And that turned into God, tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. God, just tell me what to do right now. God, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. And I kept saying that over and over. And also, as clear as day, what came was stop lying. Stop lying. Stop lying to them. Stop lying to yourself. And stop lying to me. And then it just kept repeating over and over in my head. Stop lying to them. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to them. And it became clear to me that I was a liar, I was a cheat, I was a thief, and I was an alcoholic in that moment. My business partner came out and said, Lanier, you've got three choices. Number one, you can come in and continue this conversation, or you can walk down the street to Highway 3 and make a right. Somewhere down Highway 3 is your car in an impound. You have no money. I'm not going to give you any more money, so I don't know what you're going to do with that. I know you've been sleeping in your car. Or number three, you can come home with me and we can continue this conversation if you feel like you just want to talk to me and not be embarrassed in front of her. So I chose option C, I told her. And we got into her car and we went to her house, and we didn't say anything on the car ride there. And when I walked in, I turned around and I said, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a thief, and I'm a liar. And started crying like a baby. And she said, I know what to do. You need to go in there and pack 5 shirts, 5 pants, 5 pairs of socks, 5 underwears. You're going to give me your cell phone, Lanier, and I'm going to give you 2 packs of cigarettes. 1 pack is for you, and 1 pack is for the house manager. I don't know why, but they told me to bring a pack of cigarettes for the house manager. And she took me to the Wheelhouse in Deer Park, Texas, and I stayed there for 7 months, and I did what they told me to do, and I've been sober ever since.
Okay, 7 months. That's quite a long time. I don't know how long traditionally rehab is, but that seems like a long time. What can you go chronologically, like how you felt when you first walked in, and then the steps after that?
Well, I had never been to rehab. I had never been to treatment. I had never been to a recovery home. I'd never been to a sober home. I'd never been to sober living. I'd never done any of that. The Wheelhouse is a recovery home. We have a 30-day what we call a drying out period. We're not a treatment center, so there's no medical intervention. There's no therapeutic intervention. There's no behavior modification intervention. There's no spiritual intervention. And by intervention, I mean we don't offer anything whereby we diagnose and we give you some sort of plan of treatment. So it was very confusing to me because the only thing which they had at the time, and we still do, the only thing we endorse is the 12 steps of recovery. And we try to keep it so simple that we don't add to it with any kind of commentary or other pieces of literature to go along with it. We just stick to the one book, Alcoholics Anonymous. So it was very confusing to me because I was expecting for someone to take me in and sit me down and tell me when free time was and where the swimming pool, was at. And there was nothing like that. So I was told I had a seizure on the second night that I was there. I was rushed to the hospital. Why
do you think that happened?
Alcoholics who were drinking as much as I was, when we go cold turkey, we really should have a medical intervention, and we don't offer anything like that at the Wheelhouse. So we have what's called the sick man watch, where someone sits with you if you're detoxing off of alcohol, cold turkey, which is what we do. and stares at you for 1 hour, and then another man takes over for one more hour, then another man takes over for an hour for at least 48 hours. It's called the sick man watch. And while I was on sick man watch, I started shaking, and they called an ambulance and they took me to the hospital.
Did that scare you? I mean,
to be honest with you, I don't recall being scared because it had happened. It had happened other times.
Okay.
I had tried to quit cold turkey in within the 1 year before I went to the wheelhouse, and the only solution is to drink to stop that. So I had learned how to stop this so that I would not have a seizure, not flop out. So when I came back, I carried a 5-gallon pickle bucket around, empty pickle bucket around with me to throw up in for 2 more days. And on the 5th day at the wheelhouse, we have so many. It's really easy to find a sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. Our mentors are called sponsors in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's very easy to find one at the wheelhouse because we have so many men who have recovered coming back and offering to help and mentor and read and listen and talk and share. So at the wheelhouse, we have to have a sponsor. We have to have found someone to sponsor us within 5 days. On the 5th day, the manager came to me and asked me if I'd found a sponsor, and I said, I don't know what that is. Sorry. And he said, well, ask around, and you have to find one by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, or you can pack your SHIT and move around.
That's some tough love.
And it scared the crap out of me because I knew that if I walked out, I would drink. I knew it in my bones that if I walked out of that place, I would drink. And I hated every minute of being there, and I didn't understand it. And I did not believe that I was going to be able to get sober and stay sober by staying there. But I firmly believed that if I left, I was going to drink.
So the first 5 days, you're just feeling awful. You're throwing up. You had a seizure. Did you continue thinking about like God intervening and telling you to like? Did you have any thoughts for that, or were you just like trying to get through the first couple days?
Well, I can tell you that I kept connecting the dots back to standing in the parking lot. I knew that God was with me, and I knew that God wanted me to be at the wheelhouse only because I had made a decision to tell the truth, and that's what God wanted me to do. So everything that followed that, I assumed was what God wanted me to do. I was basically sitting on my hands until I could come to understand whether this was going to work or not. I will say that as a believer, I had a real problem in the meetings because in Alcoholics Anonymous there is no particular denomination, faith, or theology that is offered. We must believe in a power greater than ourselves in Alcoholics Anonymous in order to walk through the steps. However, there's no one understanding or conception of God that is adhered to in Alcoholics Anonymous. So because the program of AA and the 12 steps out of the book of AA was the only thing offered at the wheelhouse, I sat on this teeter-totter, I would say for about 10, maybe 12 days until I bought into the program. I sat on this teeter-totter of God wants me to be here, but this sounds sacrilegious to me, that you can believe whatever you want. I really had a hard time with it, but I knew that if I walked, I kept coming back to, well, God wants me here, so let's just sit tight and I'll leave tomorrow if it becomes clear that I need to do that. But right now, I don't understand. I don't understand another way of not drinking. Everything was pretty simple at that point for me. Alcoholics and drug addicts, when we go to treatment or recovery, we're big into playing the debate game. I'm not like these people. I'm going to figure out what my program is. How many meetings do I need to go to? What church do I need to attend? How can I stay sober without listening to everything these people are saying? Not just in AA, but in treatment and anywhere. Which is why I firmly believe, with the experience that I've had so far, there's no right or wrong way to get sober. There's no right or wrong way to take 12 steps. There's no right or wrong way to have some sort of understanding and experience that changes your attitude about life, about God, that gives you the ability to stay clean and sober.
Well, you're now the executive director of the Wheelhouse, so you obviously buy into their methodology, right?
So I buy into the methodology of the 12-step program.
Right.
The Wheelhouse, the Wheelhouse is just one way of introducing the 12 steps to people. There's no right or wrong way of getting clean and sober. I don't necessarily think that you need to go to the Wheelhouse, of course, to get introduced. When I say I bought into the program after a couple of weeks, it was when I was in step 4, coming up on step 5, and I recognized that the path that I was taking after step 1 is admitting that we are addicted, right? We are of a sinful nature, and we are not able to do anything about this without God's help. And then number 2, step 2 is a belief that God can, with whatever conception that we have, mine as a Christian, that God can intervene and bring me to a place where I can choose not to drink. And step 3 is handing my will and my life over the care of God. It's all about Romans and James. Just hand it over, right? And then when we get into step 4 through 9. 4 through 9 is all about handing our will and our life over to the care of God. My sponsor kept drilling that into me, that handing your will and life over to the care of God right now with step 3, Lanier, does not have anything to do with you leaving the Wheelhouse and going to church. You have tried that so many times. So many times I offered myself at the altar, and I went to the priest, and I did confession, and I asked for God for forgiveness, and asked what I could do differently, and I could never stay sober. So what he suggested was, right now God wants you to take steps 4 through 9, and it was in the process of doing 4, coming up on 5, that I came to understand I have been hearing about this and reading about this and learning about this and knowing this with my life and experience, not only in church but with God and in Scripture, that we need to take inventory. Step 4, we need to take an honest look at where we are sinning, where we are falling short, where we are defective, right, as human beings. And step 5, confessing to a trusted friend. With or in or out of the Christian church, we need to start confessing these things before God and another trusted person.
Can you tell me why step 5 is so important?
I tell you what, I was raised a Southern Baptist.
Okay.
So part of me thought, I don't need to do a step 5. Confessing to another human being, I don't need to do. However, I confirmed an Episcopalian in 1992, and confession is offered, not required, but confession is offered in the Episcopal Church. So here I've been attending my corporate worship in the Episcopal Church and never took part in confession. And so the value that I came to understand when I got to that place with step 5 was, chapter 12 in Romans. Do you know what I'm talking about? Chapter 12 in Romans about confessing to a trusted friend in Christ.
No, I understand that it's in Romans. I want to know just from you, like, why to you, and why is confession to another human being so helpful in the recovery process?
It takes humility to a whole nother level.
Okay.
We understand and believe for ourselves as a fellowship in 12-step recovery, be it NA, AA, SA, CA, whatever, and Celebrate Recovery. There's plenty of Christian focused 12 steps. We believe in 12-step work that the problem is not drinking and drugging. The problem is selfishness and self-centeredness, right? Mm-hmm. Thinking only of ourselves and not God, thinking only of ourselves and not our neighbor. So if we can humble ourselves enough to understand that our only hope is to serve God and serve others, then we might have a chance to build this defense against any thoughts of drinking. So the trick is to get to a place where we're humble enough to not only accept God's help, right? But also humble enough to take the action of getting out of self and thinking about other people, i.e., confessing I'm a liar. In recovery, we lie. In recovery, we take. In recovery, we cheat. We're sober and clean and doing what God wants us to do, and we're human. We sin, and so in the 12-step program of recovery that I practice, I have an opportunity to take a look at a specific step and take that step. What we're talking about, step 5, and call up somebody or find somebody or go see somebody and say, I need to tell you and God, because it's all about confessing. Step 5 is not just to another person; it's to God, it's to ourselves, someone else, and God, all at the same time. In fact, some men and some people in recovery take it so far as to take a step 5 with yourself, take a step 5 with another person, and then do it again with God. So we're doing it all at the same time with step 5. So I can humble myself through humility, becoming homeless. My license was revoked, no job, no money, not welcome. And so I have been humiliated to such a point that I'm ready to humble myself to accept help, not only from God, but from somebody else. Or I can reach for that humility by doing a whole lot of inventory, confessing, praying, meditating, making amends, and rectifying any harms that I've done, and turning my thoughts to be of help to somebody.
Okay, so you've been, we're back to day 5. What does the rest of the 7 months look like?
So day five, I went up to a man and I said, I need for you to sponsor me. And I started crying. And he said, well, we in our sponsor family, we pray first. So we're going to pray now. And then tonight you're going to pray about it. And then in the morning, you're going to pray about it again. And then I'm going to come in the evening, tomorrow evening, and we're going to pray about it. And I told him, I don't have any time to pray. I need for you to say yes or no. And he said, if you have to go lie one last time to the house manager, go lie. I'm your sponsor. Okay. But we're still gonna pray about it. This man walked me through the steps all the way through step 8 before 30 days were over at the wheelhouse. That's what we do. We target taking steps 1 through 8 in 30 days. And then just like today, the wheelhouse has always had a 2-phase program. We've just added a 3rd phase, but just like today, back then, I transitioned at 30, it was actually 42 days, out of the 30-day program into a second dormitory that was referred to as a 3-quarter house, but it was really a 60, 90-day dorm. So it was recommended to all of us to stay at least 2 more months for a total of 3. And I ended up staying 7 because I was walking up and down Main Street trying to keep a job and keep my head straight and not twist off into depression and anger, because, you know, before I got to the wheelhouse, I was a graphic artist and a HR manager and a training development coordinator and a theater artistic director. Walking up and down Center Street waiting tables was not my cup of tea. So it took me 7 months to really get my stuff together. When
someone is on getting into substance abuse in the early stages, is there some pragmatic advice you can say to someone who may be like struggling with opioids, you know, after a surgery, or just something they could do early on to maybe not, the train doesn't derail so hard?
Addiction to drugs and alcohol is not the problem. The problem is the way the drugs and alcohol make us feel. Those of us who can control and manage and taper off the use of opioids and or control and manage the alcohol that we drink. And I'm also talking, I'm also talking about those of us who party hard and tear up the town for a day or two on the weekends as a high schooler or college age or a young adult. However, when we come out of that surgery or come out of that tearing up the town for a weekend, we're able to control or manage because we don't need the drugs or the alcohol to change the way we feel. So someone who identifies that maybe they're drinking too much, maybe the opioids that they were prescribed were not enough, so they know somebody whose aunt takes them and they're just using a few extra pills to get through the day, and that turns into, I know somebody who knows somebody who can sell me a few. Maybe there's a problem. My suggestion to anybody in that situation is try to take an honest look at why is it that you need to change the way you feel. Do you need to go talk to somebody because you don't know why or how you need this to change the way you feel? Eric, have you ever had a problem with drugs or alcohol?
I haven't. I feel very lucky. The group of friends that I grew up with, we got crazy in high school. We weren't like terrible kids, but it's never been a trial for me. I've had high school buddies who have died from overdoses, but me personally, it's not been a trial.
The reason why I ask is, here's what happens with somebody who is not of the addictive personality to drugs and alcohol. Whenever somebody, we call a normie, right? Whenever somebody is able to control or manage their use of drugs or alcohol, it's because either as an adult, kids, we do crazy things.
Right.
We do crazy things. My sister just called me about a young niece who's using marijuana. Well, I don't need to talk to them because I'm a recovered alcoholic drug addict. She's a kid. Yeah. You're the parent. Just tell them they cannot do that, whatever it is. So those of us who in our adulthood who do not have a problem with drugs and alcohol addiction come to a place where the use of the drug or the alcohol starts to get to a point where you start losing control of your senses and your actions and your behavior. And you as an adult, now that you're not a kid anymore, you as an adult do not want to be perceived as someone who is not in control of their words and their actions. So I'm going to go ahead and not drink 3 of these. I'm going to drink only 2, right? What happens with the man or woman who is of the addictive personality, addictive chemically, right? We do believe that it changes our chemistry. Those of us who are of addictive nature, whenever we drink alcohol or drugs, we feel more in control. And so because we feel more in control, we take a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And the more we take, the more in control we feel.
Even when you're blacking out, you still feel like your life's in control at that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, that's a fascinating perspective. I had no idea.
Which is why when we black out, we not only do we not know it's happening, but very often others think we're just fine. We're driving down the freeway in a blackout and wake up in jail.
That's crazy.
And when it happens more than once, we wake up in jail. This is my experience. We wake up in jail and we already know that we were in a blackout. And we're not going to ask any questions. We're just going to wait to see what the judge says.
Wow. That blows my mind. First off, thanks for sharing all these personal things. I mean, I know that's an important step in the recovery, so you've probably maybe do it quite often with the men you help. I would love to focus now on, if you're cool with it, just your day-to-day seeing these men change and what effect that has on you personally.
Well, I'll tell you, when I sobered up, I never had any idea that God had plans for me to be the executive director of the Wheelhouse. None whatsoever. Because the 12 steps focus so much on helping others, bringing back to others hope that you can get clean and sober, and because my sponsor did a lot of sponsor work, I was at the Wheelhouse mentoring and reading with and listening to and talking to and eventually sponsoring men as often as I could, especially because I don't have my own family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was blessed. I have been blessed to spend most of my spare time doing this avocational, kind of work. So sitting for years now, I have been blessed to be able to see men reconnected with children that they were told they could never see. Men thinking that the only thing they can do is fry chicken at the fast food restaurant, get their welder's license, and eventually go into safety work and make 5-6 times more money than they ever thought they could make. I've seen men get married and recreate and create new family, brand new families. So I was asked to be the executive director in 2018, and the only reason why I was asked was because I was the man who was always around asking, how can I help? How can I help? My experience with management and HR and training and development and sales fit nicely into nonprofit work. So as the executive director, I'm up there all the time. Let's see, yesterday, the man who was on the sick man watch came off the streets with a whole lot of shit in his pants. And I got to watch 3 men who all 3 of them were less than 15 days sober, carry this man to the shower and take his clothes off and wipe his rear end, wash him down. This past Saturday, I was doing some more of those testimonial videos. To hear men share, not only have they gotten to a point where they can serve and love and adore God and love and tolerate their neighbor and be of help and service to God and those around them, but also hear one story after another of I never thought it was possible, Lanier. I really never thought it was possible for me to get to this place. We have this morning I was at a prayer meeting with local pastors. They invited me in because I'm a minister in the community, and they prayed over me. And this is interdenominational group of men, right? From the ultra conservative to the liberal, all praying over me. Why? They said because God's work is being done at the Wheelhouse. At the Wheelhouse, we have this, and by God's work, I mean not just men getting sober and clean so they can be of use and service to the community, but reconciliation with God, and much less reconciliation with their neighbor and their community, but reconciliation with God. I've seen men go into drug and alcohol counseling, and I've seen men get their ordination and or certificates that they can start preaching and helping and counseling. Where do you want me to end? I could go on and on and on.
How is your life affected by seeing this continual changeover of these men coming through and improving themselves, and then being reconciled to God? Is it keeping you? Are you motivated to stay on the path you're on? It's got to be very influential on your life. I'm just wondering how you feel about that.
Well, it's difficult for me because I try to live as much, like we said, we live as much as we can in humility. So it's difficult for me to put into words how it keeps me sober, how it keeps me in a right relationship with God. I absolutely know that I am doing God's work. There's this, it's in the Bible and it's also in our AA literature. I am a spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation. It is my understanding from the experience that I've had that if I take theology out of the picture, and if I take my belief and understanding of who and what God is out of the picture, and just focus on bringing a man out of this bondage and into a trust and reliance first on us as humans who love you, and then gently pushing with direction to trust and reliance upon God as you understand God. I absolutely know that I'm doing God's work. God just wants to be loved and adored. I can get off onto a tangent of how I do the loving and the adoration of God, but to see men come to a place where they are loving and adoring God, and they work that out through, faith without works is dead. They work that out by serving and loving and caring for men who they never in their wildest dreams thought. One of my favorite shares from this past Saturday, as far as those testimonial videos I recorded this past Saturday, was, I used to be a skinhead.
Wow.
I used to be a skinhead. And now I have 2 black sponsees, and I love them. I love them.
That's amazing.
Right?
That's amazing. I love that. The last couple things I want to talk about is the functionality of the wheelhouse, how you raise money, and what needs you have. And then I also want to hear about your daily practice of how you stay in touch with God.
What was the first one? How we need money? What was the first one?
Yeah, exactly. When I watch those YouTube videos of those men, and you don't see them before, you're just seeing them after. I mean, they have light in their eyes, and I would say they do look very humble. And because they're humble, they look strong, and they look in this hearing stories of how they reconnected with their kids, and now they're trusted, and they just feel so whole and grateful. I mean, to me, that's like the testimony that God is real, that Christ is real. I mean, seeing that is such a testimony, and just builds me up and gives me even more like gusto to stay close to God and Christ. So I just want to say thank you for the work that you do. And with that, tell me about the Wheelhouse and what you need.
So the Wheelhouse does not receive any government funding. We are one of those nonprofits, of which there are hundreds of thousands, that choose not to receive any kind of government funding, including United Way funding, just absolutely nothing with any kind of strings attached. Mm-hmm. So we do have income from rent payments. When you transition over into the second phase of our program, you pay $90 for your bed in a dormitory, and we have a third phase of a sober home. And when you transition over there, you pay $150 a bed because you share a bedroom with one person. You get your own room. So we do have less than 25% of our donation revenue, of our revenue period, is from rent, and the rest is from donations. A little over a third of our income is brought in through fundraising. So we have a golf tournament coming up May 4th. And we have a motorcycle run and rally with cake auction the first weekend of October. And then the rest, a little less than a third of our donation and income revenue, is individual and corporate donations through website, through checks, through gifts, again, with no strings attached. We don't have much to be concerned about any strings attached, because we keep it real simple. Our success rate right now, if you spend 3 months in our first and second phase, you complete it in 90 days. Our success rate right now is 62%, stay sober 1 to 3 years, which is better than the national average right now of treatment, which is around 42%, 45%, I think it is 45%. If you complete their program. That's
incredible. Well done.
We have a Amazon wish list. It's on our website.
Okay, I'm gonna link to this stuff. I'm gonna get this information and link to it in our show notes and do what we can. Well, that's good to know. Thanks for that perspective on how you raise money, and hope whoever's listening will be willing to donate and help improve these men's lives. I would love to end with your daily practice.
What makes me me, and how I connect to God. I live by recovery, prayer, and meditation. Recovery prayer service, recovery prayer service, recovery prayer service. If you take a look at my social media, my quote unquote brand is recovery prayer service. I really do believe that recovery comes first for me. If I don't stay sober and clean, I will be disconnected from God because I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. So I have to stay connected with God. And the only way I'm going to do that is to first and foremost stay sober and clean. So recovery comes first, and then prayer. And then after prayer, service. So if I just stay sober, right, if I just don't take a drink, then I'll be able to pray and meditate. And if I pray and meditate, then I will be directed to how I can best serve. My prayer meditation, there are two major parts of it. When I wake up and when I retire at night, I learned how to pray and meditate in alcohol, even though I went to church for years and knew how to pray. In the Episcopal Church, we have a prayer book. I have a book that gives me prayers. And I also have a book in the Episcopal Church that walks me through how to pray with Scripture in the morning, at 12 noon, and in the evening. But I just wasn't getting it. And so it was the 12 steps that taught me how to pray and meditate. Not telling me what I should pray or how I should pray or when I should pray, but suggesting that I should not pray for myself. I should pray for others first, and then pray for myself only if that prayer can fit me to better serve other people. So I pray the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer out of Alcoholics Anonymous every morning and every night. In Alcoholics Anonymous, there's an inventory with prayer and meditation, inventorying my day at night, and also asking for forgiveness and what I can do differently the next day. And I do keep, now that I've been sober for a while, I've been sober for 14 years, and I have been keeping for about 10 years my Episcopal prayers. We have what's called a daily office, which basically means we put in the time to pray with Scripture and Psalm and prayers every morning at 12 noon in the evening, which is what I do. I firmly believe that if I stay in constant thought and prayer, I can pray while I'm praying right now while I'm talking to you, because I'm trying to figure out if I'm talking too much. And no, prayer comes, right? Prayer comes with inventory. I'm inventorying right now if I'm being selfish because I'm talking too much.
No, I promise you're not. You're giving a lot. Thank you for giving of yourself. It's I'm so glad that we were able to meet up. I love your Instagram. It's hilarious. You're full of light and joy, and your story needs to be shared more. What you're doing is the Lord's work, and I'm super grateful to know you. Is there anything else you want to say before we close?
Yeah, I've listened to all your podcasts so far, and I'm really impressed with your focus on what is your experience, strength, and hope. That's a catchphrase that we repeat often in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that I just appreciate that that's what you focus on. What is your experience, strength, and hope with your love and your walk and your relationship with God? So I'm really impressed.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you once again, Lanier.